Welcome back to my backyard bunker project. Today, hopefully, we're gonna take this 12-foot diameter, 40-foot long tube and sink it 20 feet down underneath the soil in my backyard. Today's video is sponsored by the Anker Solex F3800. Hopefully it can do what they say it can do. Otherwise, this video is going to be cut very abruptly short and it'll be a little bit awkward. The reason I need such a large power station is because these elephant-sized tubes are over 100 feet away from my welding outlet, and I need to secure boltable flanges to each side of the pipe so it doesn't all collapse when I drop a 250,000 pounds worth of dirt on top of it. And the Anker Solex F3800 should be able to provide enough juice to get the job done. This power station says it can output 6,000 watts through a 240 volt plug on the side, while at the same time recharging with solar. I think I'm getting a bit ahead of myself though. Let's get started. About 2 weeks ago, I got some massive helically corrugated stormwater runoff pipes delivered to my house. I chose to get two 20-foot sections instead of a single 40-foot section because the two 20-footers are more manageable with a large telehandler, and a 40-footer would require a crane, and I'm trying to avoid that to keep things as inexpensive and DIY as possible. So, in order for us to join my two halves together to create a single bunker, we need to build a custom flange. So in order for us to get the two pieces of conduit bolted together, we have to have these flanges. We could have lasered these flanges out of a single sheet and had a perfect circle, but we chose to laser them out in sections. The lasering is actually surprisingly fast and done through our friends over at Oshcut. I don't remember the exact pricing, but I'll put that over here because I'm keeping you updated on how much this whole project cost me here in 2023. Because we lasered them out in sections instead of a perfect circle to save on material, we now have to weld them into place as perfectly as we can get them. They connect together kind of like those train tracks we used to play with as a kid. The conduit we have outside also is not a perfect circle, so there will be some minor adjustments as we go along. Each of the 4 flange units create exact circles, with holes all in the same places. We should be able to bolt both halves of the tube together relatively easily once they're lowered into the hole. Working inside deep holes underground is pretty scary, but we can talk more about the dangers of that later. In order for us to get the flanges on the ends of the bunker, we have to lift it ever so slightly off the ground, about 1.5 inches. The problem with this engine hoist though is that these legs don't allow, like we'd have to lift the bunker up to get the legs underneath to lift the bunker up, which makes it rather difficult. So we've taken a piece of structural steel and elongated the crane past the feet, which hopefully gives us enough leverage to get the tubes 1 inch off the ground. They're 4,000 pounds. Should be interesting. Since our outlets are all the way over there, we have our Miller-Matic 255 hooked up to the Anker Solex F3800, and we'll see if this works. Sick. Now we know the welder can be powered by a 240 volt battery. Time to see if a 4,000 pound bunker can be lifted by an engine hoist. All right, Tyson, clip her in. Nate, do the honors. Moment of truth. Do we know enough about physics to make this work?
Probably not.
We got the counterbalance. We have the laws of physics. We have... Oh, dude!
No way.
Oh, what's going on?
I don't like that at all. Oh my gosh.
It's going up good.
It is.
You doubted me. Look how bent that is.
Ooh.
That's sketchy. The whole reason we're doing this is because this flange sticks out just ever so slightly around the edge of the tube, and so we have to lift it up to make this centered on the tube. If we were thinking about it beforehand, what we should have done is put wood underneath while the telehandler was here and set it down on top of the wood. Would have saved us a lot of time and thought. But hey, this was fun, learned some physics, and got to test the battery. As fun as using our engine hoist was, we decided to rent a telehandler, which should be able to do it a little easier. What's that story about, like, you know, the little engine that could? We got each end of the tubes raised up with a 2x4 underneath in about half the time it took us to jerry-rig the engine hoist. Having the right tool for the job is immensely helpful. Now it's time for the rings and a lot more welding. As the pipe is sitting on the ground, it kind of flattens itself out by just a few inches, like almost imperceptibly, which changes it into an oval shape. So in order to get it back circle, we either have to use a large strap across the diameter, or we have to lift up on the telehandler to relieve weight that's sitting on the ground. Something we didn't plan for in the beginning, but I think we're getting it all figured out. The storm pipes have a coating on top called trench coat, which gives the pipe a 100-year service life underground. In order to weld though, we need bare metal, which means we have to grind off the black stuff so the welding machine can get clean penetration. Each of these tubes weigh over 4,000 pounds, as much as a full-grown hippo, so we can't move them around willy-nilly, and it's impossible to move them closer to the garage, where my 240-volt welding outlet is located. Luckily, we have the Anker Solex F3800, which has its own welding plug built in, and makes moving around electricity incredibly easy. Welding is like controlling a consistent short circuit across metal, where both the wire and the pieces of metal get liquefied by an electrical arc, melting and fused together. Basically, a tiny lightning bolt zaps between the welding machine and the metal, and it's incredibly energy intensive. The thicker the metal, the more electrical power is needed. The Anker Solex F3800 can output 6,000 watts through the 240-volt plugs right here. We know that's enough energy to back up portions of a house, and it should be robust enough to handle several days worth of very intense welding. It's nice it can output the 240 volts and the 120 volts at the same time, so we can have shop lights running at night while the welder is laying beads. And since battery power is super quiet, we can work late into the night. A gas-powered generator would be far noisier than a battery power station and would definitely disturb my neighbors as we try to get this whole thing buried before the snow falls. The Anker Solex F3800 has a lithium iron phosphate battery chemistry, which can completely charge and discharge 3,000 times before any noticeable degradation of the overall battery capacity. That's like everyday usage for about 10 years. Battery technology has come a long way. As the name implies, the F3800 has 3.8 kilowatt hours of battery inside, and is expandable to 26 kilowatt hours with expansion batteries. We can double our capacity in about 5 seconds. And personally, my favorite part is that this has the ability to recharge with solar while we are welding. It has 2 DC solar inputs on the side, each capable of receiving 1,200 watts worth of solar, if you have the right combination of panels. I only have about 1,000 watts worth of solar connected, but even that makes a huge difference, since as the welder is welding, it's pulling energy from the sun first and bypassing the battery entirely, only pulling energy from the battery when it's needed. If I had a few more solar panels hooked up, we really could weld all day long. Usually we deplete the battery right before lunch, plug it into a wall outlet, let it recharge completely from 0 to 100, which is about 2 hours or so, and then get back to welding all afternoon. While this tube can be buried up to 100 feet underground, the weakest part are the lips around each edge, and we have to join two tubes together. The giant pieces of tube are made out of steel, but they've been coated with something called trench coat, which is a protective film, and helps the steel last for more than 100 years after it's been buried. While we're welding the flanges onto the end though, the heat from the welder melts through the trench coat, kinda starting it on fire. It doesn't burn indefinitely though, but we will have to recoat it with another waterproof coating after we get it back in the ground, so we don't leave any bare metal that might become a weak point for rust in the future. Once it's underground, it's a lot harder to work on. Also, to make things a bit easier, we are using self-shielded flux core welding wire, since it's a bit better at penetrating dirty metal outdoors, especially in windy conditions. The wire contains the flux, which shields the melting reaction. It's a bit dirtier than using a shielding gas like argon, but at least we don't have to worry about the wind blowing away our protection. The flange is made up of one perfect circle around the outside and a structural piece around the inside, which is welded both to the circle and to the tube itself. We are welding around the entire circumference of the circle 3 times for each one. Now that we've completed all 4 flanges on both bunkers, it's safe to say that the Anker Solex F3800 has done a fantastic job even out here in the cold weather. The Kickstarter for this thing ends on November 19th, so if you want a 35% discount, you gotta do it quick because the window is closing. Even at full price though, that thing is a lifesaver. And I do want you to know that the hole for this backyard bunker is going swimmingly. It even kinda looks like a swimming pool. If you have any questions or suggestions, leave them down in the comments, and I will see you next week.